Yeah. Yeah, it's a deep green blue. And jaded means somebody who has just a very almost caustic and negative and cautious outlook on life. You know, they've been jaded, they've been hurt. So in consequence, they're not going to give you any it's just an ugly perspective to have on life, to be jaded. You ever heard the song Once Bitten, Twice Shy? It's kind of that. It's by White Snake, I think. It's a great song. Well, no, maybe you shouldn't listen to it now that I think of it. Never mind. Forget I said that. Delete that. Where's the editor? Where's the jaded horse? I lost him.
The top of page 43.
Oh, thank you. His neck was quivering with nervous weakness, and the muscles of his arms felt numb and bloodless. That's bad. He's becoming paralyzed. His hands, too, seemed large and awkward, as if he was wearing invisible mittens, and there was a great uncertainty about his knee joints. He's losing his resolve. The words that comrades had uttered previous to firing began to recur to him. Oh, say, this is too much of a good thing. What do they take us for? Why don't they send supports? I didn't come here to fight the whole damn rebel army. Negative stuff instead of positive stuff. He's feeding on the negativity. He began to exaggerate the endurance, the skill, and the valor of those who were coming. Okay? So not only is he thinking negative, but he's thinking about the enemy as more than they really are. Himself reeling from exhaustion. That's why this is happening. He's just fatigued. He was astonished beyond measure at such persistency. Why don't they give up? They must be machines of steel. So now they cease to be people. They're war gods who are made of steel. That's basically what he said. It was very gloomy, struggling against such affairs. Wound up perhaps to fight until sundown. He slowly lifted his rifle, and catching a glimpse of the thick spread field, he blazed at a cantering cluster. Any of you hunt ducks? Anybody ever hunted ducks? Okay. Who taught you to shoot? Who taught you to shoot ducks? Dad?
So,
Dad.
And what did he tell you to aim at? The group or one? Huh? One. Aim at one bird, not the group. What happens when you shoot at the group? Nothing. You don't get anything. So that's what he just did. They call this flock shooting. Flock shooting is when you don't pick out a bird, you just aim at the bunch. Usually you hit nothing. In fact, 90-some% of the time you hit nothing. So he's not engaged in the battle. He's fatigued. His body is not, his mind and his hand-eye coordination, all that's gone. His knees are weak. He's exhausted. And he has developed in his mind a negative attitude about himself and their needs as a regiment, and over a beyond human understanding of the enemy, a godlike understanding, a mechanistic and godlike understanding of the enemy. So he's defeating himself. He stopped then began to peer as best he could through the smoke. He caught changing views of the ground covered with men who were all running like pursued imps and yelling. To the youth, it was an onslaught of redoubtable dragons. He became like the man who lost his legs at the approach of the red and green monster. He waited in a sort of horrified, listening attitude. He seemed to shut his eyes and wait to be gobbled. He's given up. A man near him, who up to this time had been working feverishly at his rifle, suddenly stopped and ran with howls. A lad whose face had borne an expression of exalted courage, the majesty of he who dares give his life, was at an instant smitten abject. He blanched like one who has come to the edge of a cliff at midnight and is suddenly made aware. There was a revelation. He too threw down his gun and fled. There was no shame in his face. He ran like a rabbit. Whoa. From exaltation to defeat in a matter of a few minutes. And his greatest fear just came true, right? He's running. He's on the run. Others began to scamper away through the smoke, which gives validity to what he's doing. Got it? Well, others are doing it. Didn't you ever use that excuse with your mom? My friends are doing it. Why can't I? And they tell you, shut up. They're not. I'm not their mother. I'm your mother. The youth turned his head, shaken from his trance by this movement as if the regiment was leaving him behind. He saw the few fleeting forms. He yelled then with fright and swung about. For a moment in the great clamor, he was like a proverbial chicken. He lost the direction of safety. Destruction threatened him from all points. Now he's disoriented. He doesn't know whether he's going to the rear or into the battle. Like a chicken with his head cut off. Running around. No direction. Directly he began to speed toward the rear in great leaps. So he got it figured out finally. His rifle and cap were gone. His unbuttoned coat bulged in the wind. The flap of his cartridge box bobbed wildly, and his canteen, by its slender cord, swung out behind. On his face was all the horror of those things which he imagined. The lieutenant sprang forward, bawling. The youth saw his features wrathfully red and saw him make a dab with his sword. His one thought of the incident was that the lieutenant was a peculiar creature to feel interested in such matters upon this occasion. Basically saying, what's wrong with the lieutenant? Everybody's running. Why are you worried about us running? Everybody else is doing it. He ran like a blind man. 2 or 3 times he fell down. Once he knocked his shoulder so heavily against a tree that he went headlong. Since he had turned his back upon the fight, his fears had been wondrously magnified. Isn't that interesting? He's more scared now than he was when he was up on the front line. Because he's running. One of the things that you learn quick in war is that there's no way out except forward. Very seldom in battle do they ever call a retreat. Very, very seldom. The best way through an ambush or any battle is through it. Running makes you a target. Going at the enemy for some reason, the weirdest things happen. You would not believe that the weirdest things happen when you go at the enemy. I don't know if they get scared or what, but it seems that you don't get hit as easily. Now, I don't have an answer for that, guys, but that's what I've experienced. Other people may consider that foolish thinking, but that's what I saw. Directly, he began to speed toward the rear in great. I regret that one mistake. Since he had turned his back upon the fight, his fears had been wondrously magnified. Death about to thrust him between the shoulder blades was far more dreadful than death about to smite him between the eyes. Get it? Being shot in the back suddenly became more of a concern than getting shot in the face. One, you're running from the enemy, the other, you're facing it. When he thought of it later, he conceived the impression that it is better to view the appalling than to be merely within hearing. The noises of the battle were like stones. He believed himself liable to be crushed. As he ran on, he mingled with others. He dimly saw men on his right and on his left, and he heard footsteps behind him. He thought that all the regiment was fleeing, pursued by these ominous crashes. In his flight, the sound of these following footsteps gave him his one meager relief. He felt vaguely that death must make a first choice of the men who were nearest. The initial morsels for the dragons would be then those who were following him. If you're ever hunting bear and one charges, you don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun whoever's with you. Because the bear will stop and eat that person. So he displayed the zeal of an insane sprinter in his purpose to keep them in the rear. There was a race, and he did not want to be last. As he, leading, went across the little field, he found himself in a region of shells. They hurled over his head with long, wild screams. As he listened, he imagined them to have rows of cruel teeth that grinned at him. Once one lit before him, and the livid lightning of the explosion effectually barred the way in his chosen direction. He groveled on the ground, and then springing up, went careering off through some bushes. In other words, the cannonball hit close enough that the concussion dropped him to the ground. But he didn't get any shrapnel. Just the concussion. And you realize that when there's an explosion, that sound and that force has, creates waves. And those waves are powerful. Very, very powerful. They can knock you right on your butt in a heartbeat. You ever seen an atomic explosion, how it explodes and it goes out and then it comes back and goes up? That's a powerful force. Incredibly powerful force. It just devastates, it just levels things. It's amazing what those waves, sound waves and others do. So he basically gets blinded. He experienced a thrill of amazement when he came within view of a battery in action. So here's a bunch of cannons. The men there seemed to be in conventional moods. In other words, they weren't fretting about the war, altogether unaware of the impending annihilation. So in his mind, the Yankee army is following him, and they're going to overrun the whole regiment. The battery was disputing with a distant antagonist, and the gunners were wrapped in admiration of their shooting. Interesting terminology. So the guns are shooting at the guns. They were continually bending and coaxing postures over the guns. They seemed to be patting them on the back and encouraging them with words. The guns, stolid and undaunted, spoke with dogged valor. Interesting. They spoke with dogged valor. It's not what you would think of, right? See a cannon go off. But basically what is happening is there's a conversation going on between the two sides through the cannons. They're speaking to each other. There's a report, they call it. And it's interesting the way he's worded that. Dogged valor. The precise gunners were coolly enthusiastic. They lifted their eyes every chance to the smoke-wreathed hillock from whence the hostile battery addressed them. The youth pitied them as he ran. Methodical idiots, machine-like fools. I hope you put both of those in there when you were asked that question. The refined joy of planting shells in the midst of the other battery's formation would appear a little thing when the infantry came swooping out of the woods. So he's saying, you know, they're engaged in their little battle with the opposing cannons, but they're missing the war. And they're about to be engulfed, in his opinion. The face of a youthful rider who was jerking his frantic horse with an abandon of temper he might display in a placid barnyard was impressed deeply upon his mind. He knew that he looked upon a man who would presently be dead. 2, he felt a pity for the guns, standing 6 good comrades in a bold row. Guns as a comrade. He saw a brigade going to the relief of its pestered fellows. He scrambled upon a wee hill and watched it sweeping finally, keeping formation in different places. The blue of the line was crusted with steel color, and the brilliant flags projected. Officers were shouting. This sight also filled him with wonder. The brigade was hurrying briskly to be gulped into the infernal mouths of the war god. What manner of men were they, anyhow? Ah, it was some wondrous breed, or else they didn't comprehend, the fools. Okay, I want to talk about that one later, so we'll come back to that one on Monday. Here's what I want you to do. Write this down, because my wife sent me the link for audiobooks. Oh, okay, it's an app. The app is called Overdrive. And all you have to put in, I think, is your library card information. I think that's all you need. Sometimes you have to reserve books, I know that, okay? Because she does that on occasion. But I think that's only for contemporary books that are really popular right now. I don't think that would be true of classic. All right, so download it, listen to it. You can do it right on your phone. She walks around with her earbuds in and does chores and stuff like that. Listens to books, so it's a great app. And if it's done well, they're great stories. We listened to one on the way back from Washington, The Tale of Two Cities by Dickens. And it was difficult because they had a different reader do each chapter. And that sucks. But she's listening to a book right now. Our grandsons recently read. And she's listening to it. She finished one, she's in another, but it was all by one person. And that's nice. Okay, Monday we will finish this, and we're gonna work on this quiz before we. Well, I'll give you more worksheets next week, okay? So that we can keep moving. But I don't want to get too far into this next section before we take this quiz, because I don't want you to have confusing thoughts about, okay, well, where is that? I don't want to do that. Okay? You turn him off, please.